Hold up. My views are my own. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Lightning round. Dangerously close.
My guest today is Cat Brewer. Cat Brewer is the director of four-time award-winning documentary feature film Sign the Show, which gives voice to deaf culture and the quest for access to live entertainment events in America. Currently streaming on Tubi, Apple TV, Google Play, and more from distributor Global Digital in celebration of National Deaf Awareness Month this April. So if you guys didn't know, that's what this month is, National Deaf Awareness Month. So we're right on time. We got it in before the month was over.
Yeah, we are. And it's an early birthday present to me.
Yeah. Happy birthday. When is your birthday?
April 21st, next
Oh,
week.
hell yeah. Sign the Show immerses the audience in humorous, heartfelt, and insightful conversations about the need and value of providing accessibility through every element of entertainment and learning how to do so, starting with the deaf and hard of hearing community. What's up, Kat?
Hey, how's it going, Doug?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be talking to you. I know in the beginning I was asking you because I said I'm a poor note taker, so I had to ask you some things so that my questions made more sense. But I just watched your documentary yesterday and I loved it. Let me just throw you some
Thank
compliments
you.
real quick. I know this is annoying and people are going to be like, why is he buttering it up? Is he going to try and he's going to, try and ask some hardball questions? No, that's not true.
Okay.
I loved the documentary. So there's an important message. There's multiple, there's layers, there's important messages in there. But the way that you created it, the whole time, I got immersed, I got fascinated, and I was having fun. I was like, here's the thing. Okay, this is my honest reaction halfway through the documentary. I started thinking to myself, I should drop everything I'm doing. I should go to school, learn how to become a sign language interpreter because I want to be a part of this so bad. And I know that's kind of an extreme reaction. But I swear that's when I was watching, I was like, I want to when I was watching people on stage, doing sign, I was like, I want to be that. I want to be that person that looks, and I don't know it. I know that's like I said, it's kind of extreme. It's probably not everybody's going to watch that and go, okay, I want to change my whole life in my career. But were you expecting anyone in the audience to feel that way when they watched this movie?
No,
No. Okay.
no, to be honest, so you're saying all these things, and these are the best kind of things that I could ever have hoped to hear, right? Because I never made a film before. I have no background in film. I didn't even own a camera before I started making this documentary. So I have huge imposter syndrome, right? I'm like, oh, someone's gonna watch this and be like, this is not a film. Who does she think she is? And so to hear you say that, and to hear you say that you're inspired by the film, and want to be more inclusive in your life, that's chef's kiss for me. I mean, that's really the message that I would hope that anyone would take away, is how can I be more inclusive in my life? And whether that's
Yeah.
learning sign language or being an interpreter.
Well, I learned a sign from your movie when you're interviewing Andre 3000 from Outkast, and I don't know if he asked you how to say it. I knew a couple signs. I know how to say thank you and I love
Mm-hmm.
you, but I did. So I learned from. He's like, did he ask you how do you say I really love you, or were you just?
We were kind of I was like, do you want to know a few signs? I was like, this is the most popular, it's I love you. And then I said, but this is what we do when you really love someone. And then it was kind of let me break it down for you. And the reason why it's the ILY and then an R.
Yeah.
yeah, your audience is going to be like, what?
Oh
We'll
yeah,
have
by
to
the way,
watch the movie to
yeah,
see.
for everybody, yeah, since yeah, you have to see it, so you have to. But it's cool. It's Andre 3000. Don't you want to see him sign "I Really Love You"? But no, I've been going around signing "I Really Love You" at everybody. I just saw this yesterday afternoon, and I've been telling a lot of people I really love them. But a lot of them
Oh,
they don't sign, so they don't know what I'm talking about. All right, so
that's
yeah,
okay. The spirit and the energy you're giving toward them will make a difference.
well, yeah, and also I tell them what it means as soon as I do it. I'm like,
Okay.
this means I really love you. uh, so like you just said a minute ago, this is your first documentary. Uh,
Yeah.
so the question has to be like, how did you get like first of all, what inspired you to do this? All the motivation, like where did this come from?
So I've been so I'll just be, I'm going to be 53 next Sunday. Woohoo
Happy
for me.
birthday.
And I have been going to concerts since I was probably like 8 years old. So back in 2014, I was going through a really challenging time in my life, a big divorce. And I was kind of trying to like figure out what I was doing with my life and what I wanted it to look like. And so I started going to concerts because music has always like filled my soul, like music and comedy. That's my thing. So I went to a concert and I saw a sign language interpreter for the very first time. I was at a Gavin DeGraw concert. He is the interview that got away from me.
Oh, dang.
Um, but I was at his concert. I saw a sign language interpreter and I was drawn, like I was watching her because it was novel to me, right? I hadn't seen it before. And then I started talking to her and then communicating with the deaf people through the interpreter because I was ignorant. I didn't know that deaf people liked music, let alone enjoyed going to live shows, right? So, in communicating with them, yes, deaf people, just like hearing people, enjoy music, right? They feel it and experience it in different ways than hearing people do. But if there's an interpreter there, they have full access. They understand the lyrics and what the artist is saying or singing, right? Because there's a lot of talking in between. And I was kind of ashamed at first, right? Because like I didn't realize that I had hearing privilege, never thought about it before. And then I was like, oh, like that sucks that people can't just go to a show that they want to go to anytime like I can. And then it
Yeah.
kind of made me angry. Well, like, why can't people, have the same access? Like, that's unfair. It's
Yeah.
unequal. So I was going to write an art. I taught at three community colleges in the Bay Area back then. And I was going to write an article and use it for all three college papers. And my roommate was like, what are you writing? And I was telling him, and he's like, you should make a documentary. And I was like, okay. Like had no clue how to do it. Went down to Best Buy, talked to a guy for 2 hours. I'm sure he hated me because I was asking him all these questions about cameras, and he's like, well, you'll probably need a tripod. Oh, good. Never thought of that either.
Yeah.
And I bought this camera for like, and tripod for like $800. And I remember like, I've got to save this receipt because as a teacher, I can't afford this and I'm going to return it within that 30 days
Yeah. Hell
because I can't
yeah.
afford it. And I still 10 years later have the camera.
Yeah.
So that was really the inspiration for the film. And there were lots of things that kept me inspired along the way. Like there's a great documentary out there if you could find it. It's called No Cameras Allowed, and the guy's name is Marcus Haney. I literally just like would love to sit down and have a drink with this guy and just like bend his ear and talk to him. It was on MTV. And he totally inspired me while I was making the film. Other people like Ava DuVernay inspire me. Charles D. King of Macro Entertainment, he inspires me. And truly, honestly, the stories that I was filming of the deaf people, that's what kept me going. I ended up with 55 hours of footage and I
Damn.
had to whittle it down to 78 minutes. And so
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't fit in the film.
Yeah.
Um, but I really hope to be able to do some shorts on every single person I interviewed, maybe 15, 20 minutes and let them have their story be told because
Yeah. Or throw
it's
it up
amazing.
on like TikTok. That's like that'd be a great platform for
Yeah,
really
I'm
really short
old.
things.
I'm so not about TikTok.
I
I need to get a TikTok
I don't have,
going.
well, I don't have a TikTok either. It just popped into my mind when you were like, well, I've got
Yeah,
all these short segments. And I was like, well, that's like the perfect platform for that is
yeah.
a TikTok
You're
situation.
not the first to tell me that. I should be motivated and go do it.
Well, like you said, before we started recording, I was saying there needs to be a transcript for this. Obviously, this is,
Right,
like I said, this
right.
is the motivation. The thing that finally is going to kick me into gear and make me start adding transcripts to the podcast for anyone that can't hear it. And you said you would help me if I needed help.
Yep.
Man, I can help you make a TikTok. It's pretty damn easy.
We'll work and
All
trade.
right,
That's how it goes,
we'll trade.
right?
I'll trade you a TikTok for how to do a audio to text transcript. Um, man, you know what? That's something you just said. You said you were at the Gavin McGraw concert.
Gavin DeGraw.
Doug Raw. In your video, one of the scenes where I was just like, God, I want to be an interpreter so bad. This is so cool. I mean, there was a ton of scenes. Like I would say practically any scene where you show an interpreter, I was like, that looks so dope. But there's the one with Waka Flocka Flame, I think at Firefly Festival.
Firefly, yeah.
And he comes over, starts rapping with the interpreter, and she's going like nuts and just like it looks so cool. And to me, I was like, it really that's kind of affected me in a way where I was like, I never thought about there's so many levels to this, because it's visual too. So like
Yeah,
people in the audience that are deaf can feel, especially a show like his, you can feel the bass, you can feel
yeah.
the beats,
The
and then
vibrations, yeah.
someone like her, like she seemed extremely talented at what she was doing, and so like there's a whole visual aspect to it. You're like you're you're reading the signs. He's right there. I mean, that seems like a perfect example of like when it goes right, and I don't know if you would feel the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Had I started this film, I started this film 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and a lot has changed and I've become a more aware of things. And Holly Maniotti is the interpreter in that video. She's
Right.
actually in quite a few of the B-roll of interpreting because I was at Firefly, one of the very few festivals where I had kind of media access, and I had very low level media
Yeah.
access, so like I could like film behind the barrier a little bit. She's so talented, and she's been an interpreter for years, right? But also in the film they talk about a cultural fit for interpreters.
Yeah.
And so like Matt Maxey interprets for Chance the Rapper, African American male, African American male.
Yeah.
um, but there is a need for more interpreters and more diversity in interpreting. And there's actually a shortage of interpreters. I know I just read an article about this in Hawaii. They're short interpreters. I'm like, oh, that would be a great place to go live and
Yeah.
interpret,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry,
Um,
guys. Hawaii needs me.
right, right. But there's so much skill and so much schooling and education. And Holly talks about it in the film about how to sign. Like, do you sign exact English so people know word for word what the rapper is saying? Because ASL is a visual language
Yeah.
and it doesn't always interpret word for word.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting, there's a lot of layers, like you said, there's a lot of layers to interpreting and finding the right cultural fit for interpreters and artists. And then how to sign, like what does the deaf community that's there at the concert, what do they want to see, how do they want it signed? Yeah, it's very layered. I
Yeah.
wish I was that talented. I am not.
So two things to take away from that. First of all,
Yeah.
shout out Holly Maniotti.
Yes.
Incredible performance from what I've seen. And I hope someday I see you at a concert because I'll be watching her instead of the artist. I will totally be. And also what you said about how I began telling you how I was like, I should drop everything and go to school, get great at this.
I love it.
But you just said Hawaii needs me, so the motivation has just because I
Increased.
love surfing more than like more than most things. So if my life was like get up in the morning, go surf for like 4 or 5 hours, and then spend the rest of the day interpreting,
There you
that
go. I've
dream
never surfed. It's on my bucket list.
dream life. Oh, get
Yeah.
out there, get out, paddle out there.
It's on my bucket list. I will. I
I would
haven't had time
highly
to do
recommend
anything.
for your first time. I would highly recommend get like someone out there with you that's experienced, because it really helps having someone push you into the wave a few times, because it's like
Yeah.
it's tricky. Like it's not like intuitive. It's
Where
like
do you live?
I live in Nashville. I only get to surf like
Ah,
once a year if I'm lucky. Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry. I took us off track. I'm sorry. Okay. Look,
It's
and
totally
so
okay. I did. I think I did.
you just said that you worked on this film for 10 years, and I know
Yeah.
a ton of work went into this, and it must have been really hard at times. And but I'm actually not going to ask you about any of the hard stuff. I actually just want to hear a fun story. So I was going to
Okay.
say, oh, what what was one of the most like fun moments you had on set while filming sign the show? And I know that's hard to say. You said you
It's
got 55 hours, so it's going to be a lot.
yeah. There's so many memorable moments. And you have to understand, it's funny because people are like, well, where's all the behind the scenes footage, right? Like, I was like, literally, it was just me. Like,
Yeah.
it was me and a camera. That's it. Like, I didn't have a lighting or sound or anybody else.
Yeah.
It was so I don't have like, I haven't captured anything, but like the stories are burned into my memory. Okay, I'll start with probably my most. I have a bunch, but I'll give you maybe a couple. But
Okay.
my most favorite is for a year. So a good friend of mine sent me a video like on from YouTube or Facebook, and it was of Matt Maxey,
Oh, Matt Maxey,
and he was
yes.
signing. Yeah, and she was like,
Just
"You
for
need to interview this guy."
just for the
Right?
listeners, I just want to bring this up. Matt
Yeah.
Maxey is one of the most heavily featured interpreters in the film. Sorry.
Yes, he is. And he's also like it's a long story, but he's also my executive producer on the film.
Oh, cool.
But so she sent me this. She's like, you need to interview him. And it used to annoy me when I was making the film. It still does because people will be like, well, how come you didn't interview Pink or Lady Gaga? And I'm like, do you have their direct number? Do you have a
Yeah.
way for me? Like you should do this. Okay, well, maybe next film. Anyway, so she sent me this. I like he knows this. I stalked him on social media for like a whole year. And I'm like, I really want to interview you. And he was just like, okay, kind of I feel like blowing me off a little bit. Also I should note, or maybe it might be interesting, the deaf community as a whole has been oppressed and marginalized for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
There's a really disturbing history related to Alexander Graham Bell, who wanted to actually get rid of the gene that makes, excuse me, that makes people deaf. And so he wouldn't allow deaf and hearing people to get married. Yeah,
Holy shit. I didn't know he was into
it's
eugenics.
it is a crazy history.
I'm sorry, you cut
Off,
out.
so I muted myself. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. No, I thought that we had a technical difficulty.
I stalked Matt for a year. Fine. So the deaf community is also very protective of the community, and I'm a hearing person. I don't have any deaf people in my family. And so they're very protective of letting people in that, what are your intentions? And so I think I finally convinced them. And so after Firefly, after that festival that weekend, he had just been at Bonnaroo where he met Chance, and Chance was like, come with us on tour, right?
Yeah.
And I believe the next stop was Firefly. So I was like, Matt, like I'm at
Yeah,
Firefly, like we've
yeah.
got to finally meet. And so that interview with him, like his entire interview, we met at 2 a.m. outside of a Waffle House and filmed that interview. And it was like, as soon as I met him, like his energy that comes off the screen, it's
Yeah.
like full blast when it's in person. Like he just, the good vibes emanating from him are incredible.
Yeah.
So once we met and we had that interview, like our friendship just kept kind of like unfolding. And then the next thing was we coordinated an interview for him to meet Waka and DJ Who Kid with another deaf person named Ebony Watson.
I love
So
that
our
scene.
friendship just kept, yeah, it just kept building and building and building. And when we started editing in 2019, I did hire an amazing editor named Kai Keith. Love you, Kai. He is my editing angel. He knows this. Um, it was just a natural fit for me to say, hey, Matt, like, I think you'd be great as an executive producer. You're consulting already, you're in the film. Like, do you want to do this? And it was just a no brainer.
Yeah.
And we just have so many magical moments as friends. I really, truly believe that is like the deepest friendship that I have gained from this entire film. Like, he has changed my life. He's opened my mind. He's opened my heart. He's always inclusive. I try to sign and I'm not fluent by any stretch of the imagination, but he never makes fun of me. Sometimes, I should say, sometimes he'll make fun of me signing, but like that friendship and that support, like unwavering from someone who's gone through this for the last 7 years with me, like it's been invaluable to have someone like that.
Yeah. I love the story he tells. So yeah, he was signing for Chance the Rapper at Bonnaroo, and then
Actually, he was signing for Dram.
oh,
He
okay,
was
but Chance
signing
just saw it.
Broccoli for Dram, and Chance was like backstage watching it all unfold.
Oh, okay. I must have
Yeah,
misunderstood.
that's okay.
Oh, but I like I said, like I need another reason to like Chance the Rapper. I already did, but he said came over and he was like, hey man, I watched you signing for the show. He's like, do you want to just come on the rest of our tour? Like, I mean, what a great way to get into that. Like, just one of those moments in time where it's like that's just a perfect moment in time. He's like, he
It was
saw
magical.
Matt's ability, Matt's talent, and came over and
Yeah.
he's like, hey, I'm going on a huge tour. I'm Chance the Rapper. Do you want to go do it? And then yeah,
Who would say no?
I think you put a scene too. My favorite, especially my favorite Chance the Rapper song. I think he's signing along
Blessings.
to you don't want no problems with me. I don't know the real name of the song.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
You
Yep.
don't want no problems with me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is so cool, man. Okay, I gotta go to my next. Oh, this
Well,
is.
I do have another, like, I'm happy to
Oh
share
no, yeah, yeah,
another
bro, no.
story.
Oh yeah,
Like,
please go. No, I had another Matt Maxey question, but I'll
oh,
save
ask.
it. I'll
Okay,
save it.
okay,
I'll save
okay,
it. I'll
okay.
save it.
Yeah, Chance has been a huge supporter of Matt's. When he was on I think it was last season or maybe the season before on The Voice, like he shouted out Matt and his organization called Definitely Dope, which builds bridges between hearing and the deaf community. Yeah, Chance is a
Okay,
great
cool.
supporter.
Definitely dope. I will
Um,
follow them
Good
and check them
person.
out. Are
Yeah,
they
good
all
person.
just on all socials like Twitter,
Yep,
Instagram?
definitely. Yeah, it's Definitely Dope, and it's DEAF.
Okay.
A little play on words.
DEEAF. Okay.
DEAF, like deaf,
D-
like deaf and hard, not Def Jam, DEF, but DEAF.
yeah.
Definitely Dope.
I feel like when we started out and I told you that I was running off nothing but caffeine, it's starting to show.
It's starting to show. It's okay.
I
Drink some more.
I
It's
straight up
okay. Drink some more.
I just said DEEAF.
It's okay. Your audience will figure it out.
My
It'll be in
audience
the
is
transcription.
they're used to me just losing track of what I'm doing constantly. So we can move forward.
I'm like,
Definitely dope.
I get
That's Matt
distracted by
Maxey's.
shiny things. So
Yeah, me.
yeah, squirrel or shiny things.
I will not
Yeah. So
interrupt you
like
again.
no, 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 we're just like, those are some of the best conversations, right? When two people are just going back and forth and you lose track and you get off track and then you come back around. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm talking to an old friend. So we're good. We're good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, another, I think this definitely did not make it on camera. I'm not in the film. I don't like to be on camera. I was like cringing when I heard my voice towards the end, and my editor's like, well, you shouldn't have talked. I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. Great note.
Um, right, right. So I first met Andre 3000 at Complex Con I believe it was in 2018, down in Long Beach. There was like this it's like this huge convention of like sneakers and art and fashion and music. And And so he was doing a little like artist drawing for Treton. Okay, see, now I don't know how to pronounce it, but and so like, he finishes and he's like signing autographs like at the little velvet rope that cordoned him off, and I like give him my 30-second elevator pitch, and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
go talk to my manager over there. I get
Cool.
that all the time, right? And then
Yeah.
but it actually happened. So interview with him, he was like, oh, like I want to connect you. I can't, Young Thug is the rapper, and he's got a brother who's deaf. So it was like Andre was thinking ahead of like, how can I like expand this or help you? And it was just, most of the people that I interviewed were so generous.
Yeah.
And my friends will often say to me, like, I don't know how you hold yourself together during an interview. And I'm like, because I have people that I love and adore and that I could be a real fangirl of, but like professionally, like I have to hold myself together. So
Yeah.
I interview him, we do this great interview, and then he leaves, and we're in a hotel in LA.
Yeah.
And we're in like the business conference center, right? So as is my process after most interviews, my release is like I start crying. And not because like I think it went bad, or I just like, it's this relief and it's this rush of just like energy comes out. So I'm crying.
Yeah.
And the woman from the hotel comes in and she's like, oh, like, I think she was going to tell me to clean up. And I was like, I just need a minute. Like, I'm like sobbing, ugly crying, like sitting in my chair,
Yeah.
rocking back and forth. And she was like, okay. So she walks out, and like literally 15 seconds later, she comes rushing back in, and she's like, he's coming back. He's coming back. And
Oh
she's
no.
like, he's coming back. And I was like I'm in the middle of an ugly cry. Like, how is this? So he
Yeah.
walks in, and I'm literally ugly crying, trying to like wipe the mascara running down my face. And he's like, Cat, are you okay? And I was like, I'm just really overwhelmed like by your generosity. And he just like clapped his hands and jumped up and down. It was like, I still got it. I still got it. I was like, yes, you do. And then like he came over and hugged me, and he's like, I was like, if you hug me, I am gonna just lose my shit. And he's like, that's okay. And he hugged me, and I literally ugly cried on this man's shoulder. And he just
Wow.
let me. And it was just like, those are the kind of people that I want in support of this film, that I want in this film.
Yeah.
I'm just like mortified that I like ugly cried in front of this guy, but
Yeah.
um definitely burned into my into my memory.
But
um
but actually, I'm a I'm a big supporter of that. I kind of actually had to later in life. I had to teach myself kind of how to cry, uh, because of America and toxic masculinity, and it was
yeah,
something that I had kind of had gotten kind of like trained out of me. That and it wasn't until I was older that I realized that was unhealthy. And so
yeah,
I was not dealing with grief properly, and I actually went
yeah,
and saw a guy, like, a grief counselor. I was like, hey, I can't, I'm not doing this. And he's like, do you cry? And I was like, I don't know how. And then but now, and I don't want to say a sad thing, but a friend of mine passed away in January, and it was really good, because it wasn't really good. I mean, that sounds insane to think,
no,
but it
I
was
know it.
what was good was that, unlike in the past, I was able to cry and feel my
Yeah,
emotions, and not, I'm not over it, but
yeah,
it's not bottled up
it
inside of
helps
me.
process it. Yeah,
Yeah. And so I really
absolutely.
support, like, when you have your feelings, and if crying is what releases those feelings, that's what you should do. I know this is kind of like off topic from what we're on, but
No, it's
I
very on
support
topic.
you 100% with that. Like, absolutely. Cause I was like,
Yeah, I mean, so going back to, there's a scene with Matt, and I don't want to talk about it at length, right? Because I want people to watch the film and see it.
yeah,
But there's a point where he's crying, and
yeah,
in my head when we're editing, I'm like, oh, like I hope, is he going to let me use this, right?
yeah,
Because some men don't want to be seen in that vulnerable position, but I truly believe that that is a strength, when you can allow yourself to feel those emotions and let them come out in a positive, healthy way that's helping you process. And so kudos to you, man. Like, I think that's a great example that you'll set for your kid. I don't know if it's
yeah.
a boy or a girl, but
I have a boy. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like my whole thing. Definitely, my whole thing is to be like cry when you're sad or cry when you're happy. I don't care. Cry
Yeah.
whenever you want. I don't give a shit. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I will say, in yeah, that scene, and not to go too deep into it, but the scene when he cries, that's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. It choked me up. I was sitting there.
Yeah.
I was like, am I gonna cry during this documentary? Which is okay. I'm allowed to now. I've grown. I am free from my,
You're evolved.
I'm
Yeah.
evolved. I'm free from my like toxic past shit where I was like, I'm not allowed to cry. So I was like, I'm allowed to, and I might. But
Awesome.
okay, so we're gonna keep talking about Matt right now. So
Yeah, let's do it.
there's a great scene in the documentary. This goes back to several things you've already said about different types of like almost maybe dialect even in
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
there's a great scene. It's where Matt Maxey is describing to Waka Flocka Flame how he interprets the lyrics in his songs and how he creates signs that are not in traditional ASL, such
Yeah.
as like the sign for lit. He does a lighter. He like gestures
Yes.
a lighting a lighter, and then
Yep.
or for like the sign for trap. He's like,
Trap.
if I use the word trap, everyone's gonna think I'm saying like a mouse trap, and it's like that's not
Yeah.
what you're saying. And he's got to, he goes, I love it. It's so funny and cool. But he pats one pocket and then he pats the other pocket and he goes, this is the drugs coming out and this is the money coming in, and that's what trapping means, and that's what it's. So it's
Yeah.
he's like, and I had
In
to,
in that hip hop culture.
yeah,
Yes.
yes, and then
Absolutely.
and I
Yes.
and I loved it too because yeah, it seemed like Waka Flocka Flame was just like he he was
He was
loving
dumbstruck.
that
Yeah.
like the fact that like there was people having to be creative and creating special things so that his lyrics can be heard, and I thought that was amazing.
Black
Uh,
it's through Black American Sign Language, which
yes,
is also part of what I was talking about how this community has been oppressed, right? The deaf community itself, but even the Black deaf community, right? I mean, like we had segregated schools not that long ago, right?
yeah,
And it was the same way with deaf people. Black and white deaf people were separated. And so they didn't have the same access to education. And the Black deaf community had to create their own signs that are very different than white ASL that was created
yeah,
back in the day. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a rich, interesting culture for sure.
And I imagine that there's even other things like, I mean, maybe regional
Yes.
dialects.
Yep.
It's like so much that could like I said, it's very eye-opening that there are so, I mean, it's just you just don't think, being a hearing person, it doesn't cross your mind to think, oh, we'll go like, when you meet someone who's really, really Southern to the point where you could barely understand them, and that's their dialect, but you just accept that as like, you don't, not every single person in America talks the same way, and
That's right.
different regions have different cultures, like different slang, all
That's
that stuff.
right.
And actually, one of the things I wanted to ask you about performances, like, yeah, I know you've probably have witnessed so many different interpreters, that have had to be creative in some way to get the lyrics across. Because actually, there's a really good scene with Ani DeFranco where the interpreter is like, "Hey, is there a sexual connotation to this thing you said right here?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yes." And she's like, "Is there a sexual connotation to this thing?" And she's just going through her lyrics. And then finally, Ani DeFranco, she's like, "Fine, fine. There's a sexual connotation to every single thing in the song. Just leave me alone." But the interpreter needed to know that, otherwise they would sign
Right.
it
They would have
incorrectly.
interpreted it differently. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what are some of the other phrases that you saw interpreters have to get creative to translate? And also, does that happen a lot? And this is a three-part question. I'm sorry, but I'll get through it.
That's okay. I'm going to
Do
have a short answer for you though, but go ahead.
do interpreters have to come to a consensus on what the sign is going to be, like for, let's say, like a slang term?
So I think I can answer that one.
Okay,
And I'm going to say no,
okay,
because it's not like every interpreter calls the next interpreter like, how do you do this sign, right? So
yeah,
it's very objective, or sorry, subjective,
yeah,
right? But to answer the first part of the question, do I know, or do I see it a lot? Are they change? I am not fluent in sign language, right?
oh,
So when I go to a concert and if I see an interpreter there, yes, I am drawn, especially back in the day when I was first starting out, right? I was drawn to it because it was novel and I wasn't used to seeing it. Now, when I see an interpreter at a concert, my focus, like, yes, I'll look at them, I'll watch them for a while, and I can pick up some signs, right? But I can't pick up everything they're saying.
Yeah.
And then my focus turns back to the artist who I'm there to watch, right? Because I'm not really benefiting from the interpreter because I don't know everything that they're saying or they're signing. And so I don't know if I like if one interpreter uses the same sign as another. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you that. I could ask Matt, but I would say probably not, that everyone comes up with kind of their own subjective
Yeah.
interpretation.
I got that impression from watching him when he was explaining to like Waka Flocka. Like I got the impression he was like, "This is what I do. This is my
Yes.
version." So I
Yes.
could see that. Yeah, maybe there is. It's something. And that's cool. Like that gives the person their own creative voice. So that's cool because
Right.
they're part of the
Right.
show.
Right. And like,
Uh,
I was like, so for someone interpreting Chance the Rapper, let's just say, right? And I'm kind of going veering a little bit from this, but so Chance has a sign name. So for hearing people, you should know that you can't just give yourself a sign name. You can't just make up a sign that is for you. Culturally, a deaf or hard of hearing person has to give you your sign name. So
yeah.
they gave Chance the sign name this. So this is the number 3,
Okay.
and then it's up at the forehead because Chance always wears a hat with the number 3 on it. So
Yeah.
this is Chance's sign name, right? And so that those are things that like everybody knows, right? And they're standard. But as far as like um slang and lingo. And you're right, it's absolutely regional. People on the East Coast, very different than the West Coast.
Yeah.
There was a sign that someone told me early on, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to mess it up. And no one's going to see me anyway, right? But
Yeah.
they said the sign for pizza and the sign for lesbian were the same
Huh. Oh, okay. I can see why.
at one point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
For everyone,
yeah, so
for everyone that couldn't
yeah.
see that, it was perfect. They perfectly both make sense both ways.
Um, yeah. So, and then, but again, that's regional and
Yeah.
dialect varies, by region. So if I would have made one sign on the West Coast, it might be something else versus the East Coast. So you
Yeah.
got to check in. You got to ask,
Yeah. And
what
going
was
into
that?
food, there's like places too where people have like where there's food that I've never heard of before. Like even just in America, and I'm like,
Right.
what the hell is
You
this?
just
And they're
fingers.
like,
Yeah. You'd have to finger spell it out. You'd
yeah.
have to finger spell.
Which is that is a great, at least that's an option always, is that hey, you can just spell it out. So,
Right.
Um, but hey, moving into like, let's walk away from music for a second because another type of performance besides concerts that really need sign language interpreters is stand-up comedy shows. And
Yeah.
like, I was just thinking about like it's another one of those things that you don't think about. You're like, wait a second, this isn't like it's not fair that somebody can't come in here and they can't hear these jokes, especially like really great jokes that are like
Yeah.
culturally significant. Comedians change the world. But also, as so many of the comedians in your documentary said, that puts the sign language interpreter in the position of having to oftentimes say some pretty vulgar statements or something they might be like, I don't know if I want to say that. But
Yeah, yeah.
but
Joe DeRosa and Al Madrigal talk
yeah.
about that, having to sign their filth.
Yeah, but that's it's a comedy show, and if that's up to the interpreter. Like if they're like, hey, this comedian's too dirty for me, you just they can just bow out of that. But more importantly, the way in which jokes are told in sign language is slightly different than how they are spoken, and I learned that from you, obviously. Um, and I cannot remember her name.
I'm gonna say you learned that through my film, but you learned it from Liana Carrera, who is
Yes,
an amazing comedian. She's Coda,
yeah.
but she talks about that in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, because she said, because she said she had a deaf mother and two deaf brothers, so she went to
Yep.
deaf camp, and she's
Yes.
funny, and she was telling jokes, and the deaf kids were like, they're like, that's not funny. You're telling hearing jokes. And I was like,
Yes.
whoa, I
Yeah.
didn't. So I guess my question really is, what are the unique challenges of interpreting a comedy show?
Um, well, there is no script, right? So if an interpreter is going to interpret at a music concert, they they really should have a set list ahead of time, but a lot of times a venue or an artist doesn't like present that to them. But what they can do is kind of, like what tour is this? Like what what songs are typically are they going to sing? Is their catalog 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? But they can study those songs and interpret those songs. So they kind of have an idea, right, of what to do. Comedy is completely improv, right? Like they don't have a script to hand to an interpreter to say, here, study this. This is what I'm going to say in this order. It doesn't happen. So there's I think a lot more challenging challenges to interpreting comedy. Also, like speaking of like a cultural fit, right? Matt and I went to the Black Brown Comedy Get Down with like Cedric the Entertainer, George Lopez, D.L. Hughley. I can't remember. There was another one. And the two interpreters that were there that were switching off and on were white women. And if you can imagine, these Black comedians are, using the N word freely, and the white interpreters were like, probably not going to sign that.
Oh,
And so they didn't. And so it was interesting because like, some of the punchlines that they told used that word.
yeah.
And then Matt was like, I don't get it. And I was like, oh, because they signed the N word. And he's like, oh, and then he would laugh, right? So
Okay.
the cultural fit of the interpreter with the performer, whether it's music or comedy, is so, so important.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of improv. And so the interpreter is definitely having to think quicker on their feet and translate one language into another language
Yeah.
real fast. So that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah. And also one other thing that she had mentioned, which I thought was so crazy, when she said when she was at Def Camp, the way, like, if you sign a joke, it's in reverse, so you do the punchline and then the setup second. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's the human brain is so amazing, like, because
Right.
everybody still laughs, so the joke's still funny. It's just, this is how you're
Right.
used to it, and this is what's normal to you. um
Yeah. Kathy Buckley talks about that as well. And she's hilarious, a comedian. And she actually, I didn't know about her, but when I interviewed Sinbad for the documentary, I'm just, feel horrible that his part didn't get put in, right? I had to cut so many people. But he
yeah.
was like, you need to interview this woman named Kathy Buckley. She's a deaf comedian. And I was like, what? And so he connected me to her, and then I got to interview her. But yeah, she talks about how they do the punchline first in
I'm
comics and jokes. And
I'm
yeah.
telling you, you got to make a TikTok account and start throwing all the
Okay,
B-roll.
okay.
You got 55 hours. That's so much. It can all go on TikTok. Just put it all up on there.
Okay, okay, you're inspiring me. You'll do
Dude,
transcripts, I'll do TikTok.
I sound like I work for TikTok. Yeah, and like I said, I don't even have a TikTok account, but I mean, it just it just feels like such a good fit. I guess YouTube as well, but
Yeah. Yeah,
depending on
YouTube
the
has
length.
shorts.
Yeah, YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
I mean, well, shit. I mean, obviously, just do both. Whatever. I mean, take the clip, do a TikTok, a YouTube Short, and an Instagram Reel.
Put it everywhere.
Put them
Yeah.
all out there. Absolutely. So I know we've talked about like a lot of the fun stuff and a lot of the really, the really fun stuff and the funny stuff. But
Yeah,
so,
you said you weren't going to hit me with any hard questions.
oh,
It's
it's not a hard
early
question.
still.
No, it's just, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, and it's just
Sure.
that because we talk your your guests and your interviewees talk about things like the ADA, Americans with Disabilities, and
Yeah.
uh why is there a wheelchair ramp in front of this theater, and yet there's no sign language interpreter, so you're cutting out
Yeah.
so many people, they don't get to enjoy the show because you're not providing this access. And
Access. Yeah.
some, I understand that there could be different reasons for different stuff. That's some of the stuff that really gets discussed. And I'm wondering, and you could probably put this into words much better than what I'm saying. I was just wondering, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you would really want audiences to get from this film, besides just that, that it's so fun and cool and there's, amazing stuff, but there's really important like social stuff
Yeah.
we need to understand.
Yeah. It's interesting. I when you said, there's a wheelchair ramp, and a woman named Julie Rems Mario in the film talks about the ADA, right? And she talks about accommodations for deaf people and who gets to determine what those accommodations should be like. And one of the things she talks a lot about universal design, like making everything accessible to everyone, right? So, like, if you think about it, like we used to not have curb cutouts.
Yeah.
So like when you'd walk off the curb, it was just a drop, right? But now there's like a paved way for wheelchairs, but not just people in wheelchairs like benefit from that, right? Like
Yeah.
different, different people benefit from it for different reasons. Like you've got a stroller and a kid, like that's easier to get down than having to like go down steps.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing that I would like hearing people to take away from the film is that to try to be more inclusive, to recognize the privileges that you have that maybe you totally take for granted. I am one of them. And there are still things that I'm learning that I'm like, oh, like I didn't realize, that. Uh, but to realize like your privilege and then to really do what you can to be more inclusive of people who are different than you. And whether that's, again, learning sign language, right? Learning to spell the alphabet, um, or taking sign language classes from a deaf person. It's a better cultural fit if you learn from someone who that is their native language. I would love for the entertainment industry, if there's anybody out there listening in the entertainment world, right, to realize how exclusionary it is and that everyone should have the access and the right to get access to things that bring them joy, whether that's comedy, music. Um, it's interesting. We did a 21 film festival run, and I would invite deaf people in every city that was close to that festival to like come, right?
Yeah.
And they would say, and my film is open captioned, so you don't have to turn on your captions, um, which is a whole interesting thing about distribution, which I literally learned every step of the way. Uh, and I don't want to talk about. I do want to talk about that because
Yeah.
it kind of makes me upset a little bit, but um, and now I lost my thought because I really want to talk about that. But
Yeah, but that's
so film fest,
the
yeah,
tangled web of dealing with distribution.
yes. So when I would invite deaf people to the film festivals, they would say, "Oh, like, is your film, like, are there going to be captions?" Yes, there will be. My film is open caption. Well, what about the other films? No, there aren't any other. So, like, even at film festivals, it's like you want to go see a movie, put some captions like on these films. You'd
Yeah.
get more people in attendance, and it's
Yeah.
the right thing to do. I want the deaf community to realize or to know, to feel seen and heard and understood, and that people are learning about this culture and that they are respecting it and trying to be more inclusive. Um, and that, maybe there'll be a cultural shift in entertainment where, like you said, a wheelchair ramp, that a deaf person wants to go to a comedy show or wants to go to a concert and they don't have to ask for access. It will
Yeah.
just be there when they show up. That would be my dream. I would hope in 2, 3, 5 years that this film is obsolete, that no one would ever need to watch it again because open access is provided everywhere. That would be
You
the dream.
you brought something to mind to me just now that that never would have occurred to me unless we'd had this conversation. Last summer when Barbie and Oppenheimer came out on the same weekend, and everybody was acting like it was the biggest cultural thing in the world. There was nothing more important than Barbie and Oppenheimer and which one was going to do better. and blah 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 blah. And I just realized, and I did go see Barbie. We actually did a podcast on it, but but I just realized, think about all the people that didn't get to go see Barbie and Oppenheimer while it was in theaters. They had to wait till it came out streaming, and after all
Yeah.
you didn't get to like participate in all the fun. Like I got to,
Yeah.
I went opening weekend. I got to participate in all the fun. I got to do a podcast on it because I was like, because I did a whole. It was kind of political because all the people that hated it, and so we did a very scathing rebuke of all the articles I could find that hated it. I enjoyed that movie, but like no, but what I'm saying is I got to be part of that phenomenon, and so many people
Yeah.
didn't, and I just now am realizing that in this moment. I'm just now realizing that. Could I add just one small anecdote?
Yeah.
Because you said, I, even when I was doing this, it didn't occur to me, but it's one other thing you said about how they like ramps and things that make things accessible. This is when my kid was really little. He's a year old now, uh, and this is when he was tiny, and I was like, getting him in and out of his stroller was kind of. I was at this.
Challenging.
I was at the spot, and I needed to change his diaper, and I saw a picnic table, and I was like, all right, that would be a good spot. But the only way to get to it was like down a flight of stairs or over like a kind of a gnarly hill. So I had to pick up the entire stroller and carry it down the stairs. And then there's like a lot of people like watching me like I was nuts, because then I was like, because I didn't take him out of the stroller. I just left him in it, and then I was like, they're
And
like
just carry.
and everyone was like that. I'm sure people were like, that is an idiot dad. But I was like, whatever. I needed to change his diaper. I needed a flat surface. Anyway, it's just kind of when you said like, hey, like when you add accessibility, it's not just for like you don't have to just be in a wheelchair to be like to
Yeah.
want to get down to that
The
picnic table and
benefit
can't.
from, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I needed to get down to a picnic table and had to do something like kind of looking back on it, maybe not the safest thing, carrying a baby in that way. Um, okay,
We trusted you. You're good. Your kid's safe.
I want to ask you if you will do me a personal favor
Sure.
before my last question. If you could tell Matt Maxey that when he had me, I think we talked about this earlier, but just tell him he had me choked up when he was telling the story of becoming Chance the Rapper's interpreter, and he starts crying a little bit. I had a lump in my throat. I mean, I was on the verge, and I think you cut away from that scene just in time to keep the waterworks from starting. But Kat, here's the
I
most
will let him know.
okay. Here's the most important question of the day, and it's this: how can people find you, follow you? How can they watch this film? What are all the ways to watch this film?
Well, I will direct everybody to the website. It's signtheshow.com. And it has all the links there for streaming, but it's on Tubi, Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube, and another platform called King of Docs, which I think is actually part of YouTube.
Okay.
But everything is on the website at signtheshow.com, and you can follow Sign the Show on X, Twitter. I don't know what it's called anymore, but
I just
it's
call it
there.
Twitter.
Twitter, yeah, okay. Instagram and Facebook for sure. Those are the two biggest platforms. Maybe soon to be TikTok at your
Yeah.
recommendation, Doug.
Everybody who wants to see the behind, like all the stuff that didn't make it into the movie. If you want
Yeah.
more, it's gonna be on TikTok. I
There's
guarantee
pressure
you.
now. Oh, there's so much pressure now.
I probably shouldn't
I just got a
guarantee things that I
full-time
have nothing to
job.
do
Yeah,
with.
I just got a full-time job, so when I was doing this film, I was a part-time
Yeah.
teacher, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of like flexibility in my schedule and leeway, and I could go do things, right? And now I'm full-time, and I'm like, oh crap. Like I don't have a lot of free time anymore to do this kind of stuff. But
Okay,
okay, I will do
I
it.
take it back. I take it back. I don't guarantee
Okay.
it will be on TikTok, but it might, or it probably will. How about that?
There you go. I'll take that. Yeah, but for sure, signtheshow.com, and then my social is just at Cat Brewer or at Sign the Show. And also strongly encourage everybody to go follow Matt, and he's at Definitely Dope, DeaFinitelyDOP, Definitely Dope.
All right,
Yeah,
definitely dope.
he's amazing.
Sign the show, signtheshow.com. Cat
Yes.
Brewer on all your
Yes.
socials. And Cat, I have to
Yes.
say, thanks for making this film, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk to me.
Oh, it was my honor. You are so fun to talk to. I feel like we could talk about a million things. Like it was just nice, easy conversation. I really appreciate that. You made it fun for me.
Thank you.